Hello, community. I hope this video finds you well. For this week, I'd like to talk a little bit about grief and how grief can truly bring back joy, not only to ourselves, but truly to our relationships, especially the close relationships that we tend to have with a partner or a spouse, or even deep friends, close friends. The interesting thing about grief, as uncomfortable as it is to allow ourselves to go into, I've experienced unbelievable emotional freedom from the burden of grief as I allow myself to surrender to the protective walls that my mind has kept up in order to, yes, it has kept up the walls in order to protect me from feeling the overwhelming burden and heaviness of sorrow and grief. But it also keeps me locked in the delusion that my mind created in order to survive what I did survive. And what I found, as most of us already know this, that the perspective that we have on whatever conditioning we have gone through, those negative core beliefs that naturally got created in order to survive the situation that we had to survive as a child. Those negative core beliefs that were created when we had a very childlike mind. And children make everything be about themselves, and they try to control uncomfortable situations. And we all do this. We all did this. But at the expense of creating false beliefs. They may have not been false when we were younger, but the problem becomes when we grow up and we develop different relationships with different people besides our caretakers, and we naturally project those beliefs onto our current day situations. So that means the perception that we have in our mind around what it means to be in a relationship and how I have to show up, my belief on how I have to show up or how I habitually show up, because that is the habit of how that's what I got into in order to relate to another person. But when I go into the grief and really acknowledge how challenging it was and how much of a burden it can still feel like when I'm believing those beliefs. So take, for instance, a very typical belief when we're engaging with other people is that we have to accommodate, we have to protect other people's feelings. We have to put ourselves down or hide a portion of ourself because maybe we got the message that it wasn't safe to shine, or our parents' beliefs, feelings were very sensitive. So we kept ourselves safe by truly putting their emotions first, accommodating their emotions so that they wouldn't get uncomfortable. And if they didn't get uncomfortable, then it wasn't an uncomfortable situation for us. And that's how it works with children. So, but then what happens when we grow up, we keep believing that we have to accommodate for other people's feelings and we have to put their needs first, or we have to play small. And it may not even be what our current day partner is expecting And I think that's the interesting thing. I think it's interesting because until I really feel those feelings of grief and sorrow around how it happened when I was younger, my lens truly believes it's true of my current day partner. This is the only lens I have. So therefore, I just stay locked in the emotional prison. It's one of those things that's like an unspoken contract that I show up with in the relationship. And I play into that. And then maybe I hold anger and resentment towards my current day partner because of my assumption. I think the mind is just fascinating this way. And this is how we keep creating Groundhog Day, as I like to call it. Groundhog Day, meaning like every day is the same. Every day in a relationship is the same because my lens is the same. And until I change or shift my lens, and how I shift my lens is through really allowing myself to integrate and reclaim that part of myself that had to be suppressed in order to survive my childhood. Until I shift my lens, every relationship is going to be the same. And I will feel the same way in every relationship. So I can change partners, but it's not really going to change the situation. I think it's amazing. I think it's unbelievably curious how the mind works and how we were shaped and how we can shift that shaping. Unfortunately, it's not that comfortable to go into our grief and to really not only intellectually acknowledge what we went through, but surrender to it, surrender to the enormity of it, and allow that place inside of us to unlock so that we can reclaim the innocence and joy of that part of ourself. So although grief is not comfortable, and I don't only mean the grief of yesteryears, but purely acknowledging grief of our passing age. I find that as I do that, as I really acknowledge, it's a bummer that I'm not as young as I used to be. And I let myself grieve that. What this has allowed me to experience is excitement. After I'm done with the uncomfortableness of being humbled by the grief, it brings back the joy and excitement of what's ahead of me. It's really a very unbelievable, powerful, interesting emotion, grief. It's so layered. It's complicated in a lot of ways, but it's an unbelievable source to bring back joy and curiosity, and it truly allows us to create new and to be excited about creating new. And we don't know how everything is going to unfold. But when we free ourselves from the burden of the grief, we stay open to unlimited possibilities. And the process can just happen through us. So I hope this helps, and I hope you have a beautiful week. And as always, I love your comments and questions. Thank you so much. Namaste.